Good morning! Good morning, and welcome to Morning Movie News, where yesterday a business headline made quite a splash with fans, and that's because of its ties to the DCEU. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the headline that Margot Robbie's production company has signed a first-look deal with Warner Brothers. And even though, again, this is a behind-the-scenes deal, it's a producing deal, and it actually only involves one DC movie, that potential Harley Quinn DC female character's solo movie, everybody's paying attention to it. And I think the first thing to take from this is that when you join a comic book movie franchise, your profile raises significantly with fans. It's a very good business, career move overall. Every movie that you're in, even outside of the DCEU or the MCU, well, actually, it hasn't really worked so much for the MCU actors, come to think of it. Scarlett Johansson to some degree, because she can't get that Black Widow movie, and she keeps coming up with substitutions, Lucy and then the upcoming Ghost in the Shell. But people don't pay a lot of attention to the other projects from the Marvel actors, which is interesting because even the actors in the X-Men movies got a bit of a boost. Ian McKellen, what's Magneto up to? What's the new Magneto up to? And Michael Fassbender does something. But there hasn't been quite the fan crossover for the MCU, and I guess that's my first question for you today. Why do you think that is? But people are very interested in what DC actors are up to. Ben Affleck, Jared Leto, and now Margot Robbie. So Warner Brothers, this is something that Warner Brothers likes to do. They like to go into business with certain actors. We talked about that with Ben Affleck with the Live by Night trailer reaction. Ezra Miller has said that was his pitch to Warner Brothers for them to put him in both the upcoming Fantastic Beasts film and the DCEU. He said, I want to be like Humphrey Bogart. I want to make all my movies for Warner Brothers. And he said, no one's doing that. And when I saw that interview, I was like, well, Ben Affleck's doing it. And it seems that Colin Farrell also might be doing it because he's in Fantastic Beasts, and rumor has it he's in the upcoming Justice League movie. And Margot Robbie, of course, was in Suicide Squad this summer, but also she was Jane in Tarzan. So they're making it official. They're putting a ring on it. Warner Brothers is going into business with Margot Robbie. And it's unusual because that's the only woman, that's the only actress on the list. And this kind of is putting Margot Robbie a little bit in Jennifer Lawrence territory. She doesn't have an Oscar. She's not even nominated for any Oscars. So she doesn't have that going for her. But in terms of creating a little empire within Hollywood, I would say that only Jennifer Lawrence is at the same level at this point. So first of all, let's go over this deal in a couple of ways so you understand totally what's happening. All right. So first of all, we talked recently about what a production company is. And just as a refresher, a production company is when an actor or a director or a producer has a company that they make films through, and they have a first look deal with the studio, which means they get funding from the studio for that production company's expenses. So Margot Robbie, she can either have an office on the Warner Brothers lot. Who wouldn't want an office on the Warner Brothers lot? It's pretty darn nice. You get to go to the commissary. It's so cool. Or she can have an offsite office, which Warner Brothers might pay for. Although if I were Warner Brothers, I'd be like, just take out an office here on the lot. It's free for me to give that to you instead of me having to pay rent for you somewhere else. But they'll also pay for some of her staff. She has 3 producers working for her. I don't know if they'd pay their salaries, but they might pay for some assistants, people to answer the phones, and some interns, etc. They'll give her probably an operating budget, and then she can hopefully add to that with the successful movies that she produces. And the first look deal means that any movie that Margot Robbie wants to produce through her company called Lucky Chap, Warner Brothers gets first dibs. They can pass on it, and then she can shop it around to other studios. So Lucky Chap, again, has 3 producers working for her, and these are the movies that they have coming up. One is Terminal, which is a neo-noir thriller. I believe that's one with Simon Pegg in it. They released a photo at Venice trying to sell the distribution rights. I guess Warner Brothers didn't want that one. Maybe they'll take it now. They have the Tonya Harding movie where she's going to play Tonya Harding. I think that's a great move for Margot Robbie. That's an Oscar move. That's for her to get fully into Jennifer Lawrence territory. Jennifer Lawrence isn't really producing though, so I guess Oscars versus producing, it's kind of evens all out. She has a movie called Bad Monkeys. Then there's also Harley Quinn, the Harley Quinn solo movie, which she wants to make a spotlight on female characters in DC, kind of like Birds of Prey and Gotham Sirens all rolled into one. I think that seems like a bit of a mess. I wouldn't necessarily go that route, but that's in development. I'm sure they'll fix it. And then Queen of the Air, which we've talked about, which is that period piece about these 2 trapeze artists who were a divo and a diva on the circus circuit, and they both met a tragic end after their love affair. I think those sound like pretty good movies, but the real test for someone being a producer is the films that they produce that they are not in. That would make Margot Robbie a true power player. Now, of course, I'm not saying she shouldn't produce movies for herself. She definitely should, and she looks like she's doing a very good job. But she wants to diversify even further. She wants to be like Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio. They produce movies for themselves, but also that they are not in. And of course, as we like to talk about, and I always like to bring up, Brad Pitt won his first Oscar not for acting, but for producing for 12 Years a Slave. So I would like to see her get a couple of projects in there where she is not the star, maybe to help out other actresses or to prove that she can do a male-driven vehicle as well. You know, I think that would be great. I kind of wish she'd named her company after herself, but that's a double-edged sword because she's, we just talked about Amy Pascal naming her production company Pascal Pictures, and it's unusual for women to name their companies after themselves. But since she's starring in the movies, it might be a little bit too much focus on her. It'd be like a Margot Robbie production starring Margot Robbie, and everyone might be like, too much. Because, you don't want to have the Jennifer Lawrence backlash, although if Passengers does well, that will end the Jennifer Lawrence potential backlash, after the whole yelling at that reporter at the Golden Globes and her less than enthusiastic X-Men situation. Although I have to say, I've heard Michael Fassbender say some pretty bad things the last few days about his performance in those films, and I think he should watch it unless he wants to pull a Jennifer Lawrence. But anyway, I think this is very exciting for Margot Robbie. It's very exciting for actresses in Hollywood, and I hope that it works out. I hope that these movies are good, and that this isn't just a vanity project, that she's able to produce some genuinely good movies, not only starring herself, but starring other people. Very interesting. And maybe some other actresses will be inspired to follow suit and produce films as well. Sandra Bullock actually is a very good example of that. Sandra Bullock, after Speed, she got into a situation where she couldn't get any roles. She couldn't get any movies. So she had to start her own production company, I believe with her sister actually. And that's how she got a lot of work. Reese Witherspoon's actually a pretty prolific producer too, but that hasn't worked out so well for her. So let's see where Margot Robbie lands. All right, so that's the first story of the day. I know a lot of you were very curious about that. I hope that gives you a little bit more insight as to exactly what's happened. And the Harley Quinn movie, someone just tweeted me and they were like, people are talking about it. It's not anymore. We don't have any more information about it. Warner Brothers is interested in making it. They've put it into development, but it doesn't have a date. It doesn't have like a script. It doesn't have a release date. It's still very much in the gestation period. All right, so the second story of the day is about a film that's been gestating for a very long time. And that's James Cameron's Alita: Battle Angel. And when I first saw this headline, I was like, James Cameron, are you to do something besides Avatar? And then it was like, nope, surprise, Robert Rodriguez is directing. Or as I like to call him, El Cheapo, because he seems these days to take more pride in his ability to make a film on the cheap than to make a good film. And it's sad because, that was his claim to fame, that he could make these great, genre films that had a very strong cult fandom for very little money. He's like, as you might recall, he submitted himself for medical testing to get the money to make his movies when he started out. But I think he's moved a little bit beyond that, and I think he's so in love with the idea of producing movies on the cheap that he's unable to see that they kind of look a little cheap these days. And I wish that someone would stage an intervention with him. I also really like the fact that he works so hard to promote Latino talent in his films, but sometimes I think that gets him into a little bit of trouble. Like, for instance, I wish he would cast, my mind is blown by the way Wagner Moura looks in real life, who plays Pablo Escobar on Netflix's Narcos. I was reading an article about Netflix in the Hollywood Reporter, and they had a photo of Wagner Moura at the premiere, and I was like, what the heck? He's so much thinner. He looks so much younger. It was crazy. And I was like, why doesn't someone hire him? He's such a good actor. And also apparently very versatile on his look. But anyway, while I think that he's a great actor, I do not have great things to say about Rosa Salazar, who ended up getting the role of Alita Battle Angel because Robert Rodriguez obviously wanted to cast a Latina actress. It's one of the reasons he continually casts Jessica Alba, even though I think nobody really wants to see Jessica Alba these days. I'm sure there are other actresses out there, Latina actresses, who could really use a big break, who are more likable than Rosa Salazar. I don't know if there are any Rosa Salazar fans out there. I'm not quite sure there are, but I saw her in The Maze Runner. I thought she was weak, and I interviewed her on the red carpet for Maze Runner. And I thought she seemed like a very nice person, but I didn't see a lot of star power there. It wasn't like one of those situations where you're like, you just don't have the right role. I was like, not seeing it. Maybe she'll surprise all of us, but I really, I'm surprised that James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez would go with her. I mean, I know why Robert Rodriguez did it, but I think that he made a poor choice. But again, maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. But anyway, Rosa Salazar will be playing a cyborg bounty hunter, and the reason this movie is in the news is because they're continuing to cast as they move forward aggressively now. And actually, Jessica Alba was supposed to be, I believe, Battle Angel at one point, come to think of it, and that of course did not work out. But anyway, Jackie Earle Haley was just cast, that's why it's in the news, as a monstrous cyborg who will be the villain versus Rosa Salazar's cyborg bounty hunter. And then Christoph Waltz has also been cast, and I'm guessing he's playing the scientist who finds Alita's cyborg body, brings her back to life, but with no memories, but thankfully her deadly assassin training, martial arts training, so she can be a bounty hunter. This is a new trend of women as robots. It's really interesting. They have Blade Runner, Ghost in the Shell, now Alita Battle Angel, and I'm not quite sure if it's an empowering or misogynistic trend. We'll see how these female characters are interpreted. Like on the one hand, if all these robot people were guys, you'd be like, why don't they cast any women, right? But then if they, I think it really depends on how they're dressed, what the use of these robots is, etc. We'll see. I mean, as you might recall, to be fair, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator spent a lot of time naked too. So I guess all is fair in the robot world. So I'll be curious. I just think the casting on this, outside of, I think Jackie Earle Haley's good. Christoph Waltz, a little one note, but Rosa Salazar, I'm telling you, I think that's the Achilles heel of this film. In front of the camera and Robert Rodriguez behind it. I hope that he's dropped his cheapness. And then the third story of the day, speaking of women, is that Natalie Portman has become a huge frontrunner in the Oscars race all of a sudden because of her film Jackie, which just recently was screened at Venice and the Toronto International Film Festival, got a lot of attention. And people say it's pretty good. And the reason it's in the news, for today's episode, is that Fox Searchlight purchased the distribution rights. And I think it's interesting because Fox Searchlight's big movie for the award season was supposed to be The Birth of a Nation. And in some ways it still is. But making this really high-profile purchase, I think Fox Searchlight is doubling down and kind of having a safety here with Jackie, being like, Birth of a Nation might not work out with the Nate Parker problems. We might get some nominations, but I don't know about wins. So let's see if we can do something with Jackie so that we have something to show for our Oscar season. Fox Searchlight has to take care of Fox Searchlight too. So, and also Birth of a Nation, there's a slew of football and basketball rape stories that just came into the news that are very similar to the Nate Parker situation. A woman passed out drunk, wasn't able to say no, so that was taken as a yes. Those situations are all still developing, though. We don't know, there are allegations flying left and right, but, the rape culture situation continues to be a problem. And I'm sure Nate Parker wishes he were not part of that conversation. And I'm sure Fox Searchlight does, too. But what's interesting is this Jackie movie is about Jackie Kennedy. And Natalie Portman, of course, won famously for her role in Black Swan. So that would make her a double Oscar winner if she were to win. And she has a good shot because the female Oscar race, both in supporting and lead, is always notoriously wide open because there are hardly ever any competitors. So she has the pedigree of having already won. Everybody likes Jackie Kennedy. Or Jackie O, as she was famously called later in life for Jacqueline Onassis. So I can really see this being a very strong contender if the film is as strong and her performance is as strong as people are saying coming out of these two film festivals. So it would be funny, though, that Natalie Portman would go from having like some real clunkers like Jane Got a Gun at the box office to being a double Oscar winner. I mean, talk about a Jekyll and Hyde career, right? But what's really interesting to me is this movie deals with Jackie Kennedy, the week or so after the JFK assassination and what she did to secure his legacy, and of course deal with his startling and tragic assassination. It's a very good idea for a movie, and it goes with the idea that they have of the trend of biographies these days, where they don't show someone's whole life, they just show a snapshot of it, like a defining moment, like for instance My Week with Marilyn, and you get an idea of historical figures from that snapshot. But what's a little bit disappointing to me is that we're having a debate a lot in the news about Michelle Obama, the current First Lady, versus Melania Trump. I'm sure you've seen these stories. They aren't going around so much right now, but they were pretty popular there over the summer. And a lot of people were saying, I thought, some really offensive things about Michelle Obama and how Melania Trump would be a real first lady and that she was a more manicured, hotter first lady. It was really, unfortunate. In 2016, people are still saying stuff like that. But the thing about celebrating Jackie Kennedy is that she is one of the most artificial first ladies that ever existed. Now, maybe the movie will address that and show that behind the scenes, what she was really like. But we're talking about a first lady who even put on a fake voice for every public speaking thing that she did. She had like this baby voice like that she put on, which is ironic considering the fact her husband had a very infamous affair with Marilyn Monroe, who also used a fake voice. But Jackie Kennedy had one as well. And so you're talking about a woman who would even change her voice in order to talk to the public in an effort to come across as very feminine. So we'll see how it's portrayed. But, I'm curious about the movie, but it's a very interesting situation. So those are the 3 stories of the day. The viewer question comes from Angel Ortiz, and I thought this was a viewer question that many of you would really like. So it says, "Hello, Grace. I am from Puerto Rico and a fan of your channel for quite some time now." Thank you, Angel. "I want to tell you that you do great work analyzing the film industry in a fun and intelligent way." Thank you. So Angel has 2 questions. I have 2 questions for you, and I hope you can answer soon. When does a movie change from being entertainment and become art? And when is a movie just supposed to be art or just entertainment? We'll wait for your answer, and thanks in advance. And I think that's great. There was a question like this in film school, actually, and I actually had a different answer than everybody else in the class, all right? Which some of you, I'm sure, will find amusing. But a professor said, when you paint a picture, who is it for? Did you paint the picture for yourself, or is it something for the viewer? Like, what was the point of the act? And I said, it's for the viewer. It's for the person seeing the painting, because the painting was already in your mind. So why else put it to canvas and actualize it unless you wanted to share it with other people? That's a very black and white depiction of that. I think I can give you a more nuanced answer today. But I felt very strongly about that at the time and sparked quite the debate in my class. But anyway, here's what I would say. If that painting, I will further expand upon it. If that painting only hangs in your house and you never have ask anyone to see it but yourself, then it's totally for you. And you just realized it so that you could enjoy it all the time and not have to think about it, right? You painted it for yourself. But if you put the painting out for public display or you put it out in an art gallery, then you've painted it for other people. And suddenly what they think of it and what they want from the painting becomes more important. And I would say that's the same for film and art versus entertainment, right? So if you make a film and you make it for distribution on the art circuit, right? But even then, there's the question of like personal art and commercialized art. And I always like to say that high art only needs to please like a few people, like the critics, and then also one buyer. One person just has to like it and buy it for a ridiculous sum. But if you're in the business of mass consumption of art, you need a lot of people to like your art, because you need to sell a lot of movie tickets, or you have to sell a lot of tickets to your art show, or whatever the medium is, right? So it's a big question as to what kind of art you want to go into. If you want to go into commercial art, do you want to go into high art, or do you want to go into mass commercialization? And there's a lot of money and success to be found both paths, but you have to think about what the audience is. But anyway, so I think the question is, you have to ask yourself versus entertainment and art, what is the what venue and place are you putting your thing? So we're going to talk about film, because that's what Angel asked about. So the first question is, when you make a movie, where is it going to be shown? Is it just for your own private viewing? Then it's definitely art, right? Is it something that you put in is it something that's, that you make that you put in a gallery, right? Let's say you have it at the MoMA. Then it's definitely art, right? But then you have to answer that question about, is it high art? Is it mainstream commercialization art? That's a whole different conversation. But when you have someone invest in it, and you need to have you have to pay the return to your investor, right? Then it starts to move into a business section, because you owe someone money, they've invested in you, they want to see a return on that investment, especially if you want anyone to ever invest in you again. Is this a one-off? Do you want to take the money and run? Then I guess in some ways you're Andy Kaufman, right? Then that's some art. But Andy Kaufman needed an audience to continue to be Andy Kaufman. You know, one of the great things about The Walk, that Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie about the two towers, is that his teacher from the circus said the audience is incredibly important because without the audience, there is no show. So that's something very important to think about. So you have to ask yourself when you're making a film, do you want there to be an audience? And what audience is it? Because, you know, for art, there's an audience too. But the question is, what's the size of the audience, et cetera, et cetera. But I would say when entertainment versus art, if there's an investor and if you're selling tickets to it, then it starts to become more important for the entertainment value and the financial return, the financial recoupment. And then you have to also ask yourself, do I want to do this again? So I think that, you know, it's a complicated question about entertainment versus art. I think that ideally, all films should have artistic aspects to it. I think that's why we go so crazy over a film like The Dark Knight or the upcoming Kong Skull Island, and myself, Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. I thought that had a lot of artistic aspects to it. But as you can see, maybe it's skewed to art and not entertainment enough. But you know, it's a balance with I think commercial film, with Hollywood film. You have to strike a balance, and you know, don't kid yourself. Even awards films are also, you know, need to return a profit, etc., or at least win awards, which leads to them selling tickets. So a movie, entertainment versus art, I would say that it's a complicated dance. Again, it's striking the right balance, and you really have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of the film? Where is it supposed to air? Am I selling tickets to it? What's the amount of money that was invested in it? You have to look at all those factors, and then you have to see, you know, what are the expectations for the film, and does it meet those expectations, and what does it need to succeed? Is it expected to be art, like a film like The Artist? Or is it expected to be entertainment, a film like Jurassic World? That's also very important. What are the expectations of the critics, the business, and the audience? These are all things you have to think about. It's a complex situation. I wish I could give you like a line, Angel, where it would cross from entertainment to art, but that's just simply not the case. And I think that's why it's such a complicated discussion, and why arguments, heated discussions can arise from it. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in today. That's today's morning movie news. Please write down below what you think today's top 3 stories, Angel's viewer question, anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, and any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching. Bye.